Well, hello again, it's Andy on my Derbyshire Rural Rider channel. Today's ride is to Buxton Pavilion Gardens, somewhere where I've not been for a while. In fact, not been very much at all, really. So my starting point is Taddington, which is just off the A6 Taddington bypass. It's a nice little village. It's obviously not as busy as it once was, as this used to be the main road through many years ago. In fact, I'll put a side-by-side map on in a minute when there's not much scenery to look at. I think last time I was in Taddington Village, I was on the old Lex Moto scooter, and I didn't have any proper navigation on that. I just sort of plotted my route in advance, and I turned down one of these lanes, probably one of those to the left there, and it turned into quite a rough dirt track, and I'm thinking, shall I carry on? Is it going to get worse? Shall I risk it and try and get through? And then coming up on the opposite direction, there was somebody on an off-road bike, so I said, well, I get through on scooter, and he said, no, I wouldn't advise it. But then on the way home on the scooter, the drive belt snapped. Now, whether that's just a coincidence or me handling it too roughly, I don't know, but had to leave it overnight or a couple of nights before it could be recovered, because it was a weekend, so there's no point having it recovered home, because it can only be recovered once. So if I had it recovered home, I was stuck with it, so I left it a couple of nights until the shop was open that could do the repair, and then it got recovered straight there. I mean, it was very kind of the people with the farm that let me let me leave it there for a couple of nights. In fact, I even got a lift home from them. I know it wasn't a long way out to Chesterfield, but it was still very kind of them to go out of the way to take me home. So the reason for my destination being the Pavilion Gardens is I went to concert, excellent T-Rex tribute band called T-Rex to see. They've been going far longer than the original group ever lasted, due to the sad passing of Mark Bolan, and they're really good. In fact, I did video a few of the songs down my other channel, my Andrew Slack channel, if anybody wants to have a look at T-Rex stuff or T-Rex tribute stuff from a couple of years ago. And where I parked the car when I went to that concert, it was in the middle of a heat wave, as it is at the moment, and the car park was the opposite side of the Pavilion Gardens to the Buxton Opera House where the concert was. So I walked through there, and I thought, what a lovely setting this is, I must go back there. So 2 years later I decided to have a ride back there, and I took a few photos, which is on at the end. The only the previous concert I've been to were probably 5 or 6, 7 years ago, when I went to see Al Stewart, who's always been one of my long time favourites. So I got my new beeline after the mishap that I had on my last group ride, or last but one group ride, the Wednesday before last, when I went up to Flash Bar Stores. I'll put photos on now comparing the new mount with the old mount. Now it looks like the inner part should screw onto the outer part, as there's a screw hole, but I don't recall there ever being a screw to hold it in place. If there was one, I don't know how it's come out, really, because it seems to me that it was the adhesive that had melted and just lost it. And to be fair, the Beeline company were quite good about it. They did say I could have a refurbished one for free, or 20% off the new model, and I thought, as I've had the other one about 4 years, I'll try a new model out, because it's got a lot better display screen, and I've also signed up to Beeline Plus, which it adds the speed on like you get on quite a lot of sat navs, and or if you do it straight onto Google, it tells you its speed, and also it's got a feature where you put a starting point and how many miles you want to do roughly, and it sets you a roundabout route. I've only tried that on the phone so far. I've not tried following one of the routes. I'm not sure if I'm impressed with it or not, because it certainly doesn't find the back lanes like I like to travel, and it does seem to send you around the main routes, even the A's and B's, even if you put it on a not so fast setting, because I think it's got fun, relaxing and fast settings on it for the different sorts of ride. I don't know how it determines what sort of route to give you from that, but that's what it does. So I thought I'd give that one a try. I've had the other one quite a long while. I'd say I'm only 25 miles away from Buxton, and I like doing a lot of Peak District type rides. It's just not a place I've been to a lot for some reason. Back in my student days at 70s, I used to sometimes travel that way, going over to Salford where I was studying. My normal way was probably the A6, and at that time that meant going through villages like Chapel-on-the-Frith and Whaley Bridge, because the bypass wasn't built by then. So there are occasions I'd either go up the Snake Pass for a change, or go through Buxton and up Long Hill. In fact, thinking about it, the only time I ever got stopped for a routine check from the police was when I was on Long Hill. I can't remember if I got my A35, my first car, or my Mark II Cortina, but they didn't find anything wrong with it anyway. It's just unnerving when they stop you and do a routine check over. And all the old bangers I've had since then, before I could afford a new car, I never got routinely stopped in those. So going back slightly earlier than my student days, sometimes used to have a drive up there on a Friday, well, usually Friday night, probably sometimes Saturday night, probably about 4 of us, because my mate who lived next door, a year older than me, he'd passed his test. He'd not got a car of his own, but he did used to borrow his dad's car, and I just remember it as being a fairly little Citroen, but quite advanced in technology for 50 odd years ago. It had got that sort of suspension where it pumped up. If you hadn't got the engine on, it sort of let down the suspension, and then it was like an air-type suspension, and it was quite a novelty. And I think it was semi-automatic. I think it had gears, but not a clutch, as I remember rightly. So we did used to have drives out just for the sake of driving, same as now I've got motorbike just for the sake of riding. I wouldn't contemplate going out in a car now just for fun of driving, because it isn't fun driving, I don't think. And then my other early-ish memories of Buxton, I went to the music festival in 1974. There's some fairly big names on. Mark the Hoople were top of the bill on the first day, and the Lindisfarne and Man were also on, as well as some smaller acts. On the second day there were the Chapman Whitney Streetwalkers, who were sort of a breakaway from family. In fact, I saw them in more recent years, and they've gone back to calling themselves Family now. And Humble Pie, and then top of the bill at Faces. Although having had a lift to get there and just stopped over one night, the bill was running quite late, or the schedule was running quite late, so my dad had kindly given us a lift over, and so we're only sort of beginning the faces because we thought we were obliged to get away, really, as my dad had been waiting for us to pick us up, and we thought it would be better to get away before all crowds went out. Now, we weren't organised at all for camping out overnight, and in fact I've never been to an overnight festival since where you camp out. We took my tent, but we never even thought to take sleeping bags or anything. We just thought we'd keep down in tent just to shelter. And it was appalling weather at the beginning of July, and there were people getting hypothermia because it was that cold. And the venue for that were a place called Booth Farm. I think it was somewhere up above Buxton, where we call Buxton Festival. I think they'd held them from about 1970 or 1971. This one in 1974 was the last one. So I don't know if it had not been a success. It wasn't great compared with modern ones in that they were just a single stage, so there would be as much time setting up between the acts as there were the acts actually being on. So it could get a bit frustrating waiting, and I can remember people throwing cans and things at the stage, getting a bit annoyed, and then one of the roadies threw it back, and that nearly caused a riot. Now, normally I'd only go to Buxton via the A6, or if we were bypassing Buxton to head for the Cat and Fiddle, we'd probably come up this way and turn off by the bookshop and bypass the town altogether. But as for going to Buxton, I'd never like contemplate going by the A515. So that's I just thought I'd try a different route to film, really. All makes a change from going on the routes you used to. So we're heading down towards the High Peak bookstore, which is it's a really nice big bookshop, and it's got a nice cafe, and I do know the owner actually is from Chesterfield, and David McPhee was quite big on the music scene as being a concert promoter, and he also owned one of the best record shops called Some Kind of Mushroom that were always very popular with teenagers. I think he owned that from in the 60s to mid-70s, and perhaps his biggest claim to fame was more or less discovering Joe Cocker, because Joe Cocker's most famous song, I Get By With Help From My Friends, often renowned as being one of the greatest covers ever. It was actually recorded or demo tape recorded at Dave's flat on Chatsworth Road in Chesterfield, and I'd say the rest is history as far as Joe Cocker's career. He went on to tremendous things. So we're just coming down towards the bookshop on the left. I only see a glimpse because I cut a bit out here. I don't want to get accused of jumping yellow light, so I'll miss that bit out. I'm not providing evidence for anything like that. So this Sunday there's a classic bike event at CMC in Clay Cross, if anybody's interested. It's the British bikes, which are always nice to look at. I wouldn't really want an old bike because of what maintenance it takes, but I do really like to look at the classic bikes. bikes, which is why I go to the monthly meetings at Matlock at the Duke William. I presume it'll be full of fellow pensioners like myself. Interestingly, quite a lot of the YouTube channels I watch are of people of similar age, and one of the recent themes seems to be, am I getting too old to ride, or do I need to downsize? I know Kev, Twisted Spire Rider, that other fella from Chesterfield, as I call him, because his catchphrase is that fella from Chesterfield, but I've been in Chesterfield longer than he has, so but I'm not going to argue about the name. He mentioned the subject the other day, and what I'd never thought of is those like myself who are short in stature. It takes more shoving a bike round than taller people now. I'm always thinking about it as like a power to weight ratio, and that's the main factor, but apparently it's you can shove a bike around a lot easier if you're quite tall. I mean, I'm about the right weight for a 6-footer, but trouble is I'm only 5'6" and I'm carrying too much weight. And then I'm also watching Stuart Fillingham's YouTube channel, where he's talking about younger people now aren't as fit as we perhaps were in the 70s. But thinking back to the 70s, I mean, I didn't have a bike then, but like a 250cc bike were quite physically small compared with the 125s now. So I'm not totally buying the argument that we're fitter then than young people now, because you've only got to look how much fitter athletes are nowadays than they were back then. I get to the point here where there were massive delays for four-way traffic lights, and I think I cut out about 7 or 8 minutes. I got towards the traffic lights, and they changed 2 or 3 times, and then annoyingly I took a sharper left than I should have done, and ended up on the wrong bit of road, and had to double back to the same traffic lights, which were quite annoying. That is perhaps the one disadvantage with the B-line compared with a traditional sat-nav, is that on a traditional sat-nav you can see more of the surrounding roads, and I could have probably taken a shortcut through, so I'm cutting it out from here anyway, and then it takes me onto the road where I park up, because nobody wants to watch 7 or 8 minutes of me stuck in a traffic jam and then taking the wrong route and turning round. So I'm just getting now towards my destination. The road that van were coming out of, I'm not sure if I could have cut through that one and saved being in traffic jam, but like I say, I didn't. I don't know the back streets round Buxton, but it is free parking, and there was just a nice bike-sized space for me to park in just here. So the video ends here, and then there's a few still shots of the lovely gardens, and I had a quick drink at tea room, and I didn't want a full snack, and not being greedy as I often am, I actually had a child-sized sandwich. I said, "Am I okay to have a child-sized sandwich?" And said, "Yeah, that's fine." So quite a rarity for me, that. So we'll end here then, and then there's just the map of the route on at the end, and hopefully I might see some of your local people on Sunday at the Classic Bikes. If not, see you next video. Cheers then.